Can a starfaring species be non-sentient? Now, I want to talk about the possibility of a being which is non-sentient, capable of spaceflight. First, we can all imagine this because if you accept the idea that a robot at its core is not sentient, then they can be spacefaring, right? I mean, heck, we have robots out there right now in space. They're not that sophisticated, really, by science fiction standards, which only goes to show how easy it is to set up a pre-programmed colonization and exploitation device. But I don't want to talk about robots right now. I want to talk about living beings. First, what do I mean by sentience? I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole, but let's agree that it is the ability to create new things, adapt to new environments, maybe have technology, maybe not. You can clearly be intelligent with that technology. Now, all living things have some of these abilities. Sentience isn't a barrier you pass, it's like a scale. Even a protozoan can react to stimuli. I was recently reading about this great scientific experiment where they took carp, the fish, which is famously not very smart, and they had him in a tank, and the scientists started playing music for them. Now, this isn't a story about how, the carp loved classical music. The carp didn't care about the music, right? But they played two kinds of music. They played classical music, and they played blues. Now, there was a button in the tank the carp could bump. Now, if classical music was playing, the carp, if they bumped the button, got nothing. Okay? I guess the investigators didn't like classical music. But if they bumped the button when there was blues playing, they would get a food reward. Well, the carp pretty soon learned to tell the difference between blues and classic. But here's the cool thing. When they played a new artist of blues, someone the carp had never heard before, the carp could tell it was blues, not classical, and they'd go and bump the button to get some food. The carp learned to distinguish genres of music, and that's a carp. I would never send a carp to outer space. Every creature has this ability to distinguish. Even so, it seems that for traveling to other worlds, you'd want to have a level of intelligence comparable to humans. Or would you? Can we imagine a species of creature without being what we'd call fully sentient, can travel through space, colonize other worlds, build a star empire? Let's consider what creatures on Earth come closest to rivaling our civilization. Recognize this? It's a termite mound. It's a huge air-conditioned structure that includes a variety of chambers. There's some for agriculture, some for nursery, some for defense, and it's all built by animals that are plainly not intelligent. I mean, a termite does not have a big brain. Okay? Let's discuss ants. Ants have some of the very largest brain for insects. Of course, that's still not very big. Now, this picture shows leafcutter ants. And this shows some scientists excavating the nest. Leafcutter ants have a huge number of different castes, I think more than any other social insect. Atta texana, the leafcutter ant that lives here in Texas, has 12 different types. Like, fire ants have 3, if you include kings and queens. Atta texana has 12, not even counting the kings and queens. And there's tropical leafcutting ants that probably have even more. So each of these castes has its own jobs that it does. So these tiny beings with tinier brains have a pretty sophisticated social system. So where I'm going with this is, what if a caste system of insect-like creatures, mentally, not physically, became spacefarers? First of all, let me make one thing clear. Here's a picture of the brain bug. I'm not talking about a brain bug. The queen of an ant colony is not the brain. There is no brain bug like Starship Troopers. I'm not saying that a creature with some kind of super brain isn't possible. In fact, you may recall that I postulate this for the fungi from Yuggoth, as well as my crystal aliens in this episode. I'm avoiding it from non-sentient caste creatures because I think it's cheating. If you have a super intelligent brain behind your actions, then you're sentient like anyone else, even if the guys doing the work aren't. Now, one of my favorite science fiction authors is Jean-Henri Fabre. I probably pronounced that wrong. He focused on insects. In one of his books, he reported about a very interesting thing that happened at the University of Paris. At the University of Paris, there's a big garden. And of course, because all the professors are French, they all smoke. Jean-Henri Fabre, who, also smokes, went out to a corner of the garden, and he was smoking a cigarette. He dropped it on the ground, and he noticed that the ants ran over to the cigarette, and they stuck their abdomens in front of themselves, and they started squirting formic acid onto the cigarette to extinguish the fire. And if ants got too excited and got too close and trying to do this, other ants would pull them back for safety. It was like a fire brigade of ants. He was amazed. So he went to a different part of the garden and tried it again. Let's try it here. And he threw it down near an ant pile, and the ants rushed out and got burned up. They didn't try to put it out at all. It was the same species of ants. So he's like, So he started looking into what was going on here, and he learned that the ants that had the fire brigade, that corner of the garden, there was an elderly professor of literature that always smoked there every evening, every day, and dropped his cigarette butts there. So those ants had been dealing with this guy smoking for like 20 years, and the ant colony had learned to extinguish cigarettes. Now, the individual ants couldn't have memorized that. Ants don't live that long. But it was clearly possible for the ant colony to learn something that you could never teach an ant, but you could teach the colony. That's how the colony has been able to react to conditions. This has been found other words. I'm not saying that the ants have a group mind or some kind of telepathy. It's just that in the interaction of the ants with each other, they produce something greater than the sum of the parts. If you think about how a computer would work with a million identical switches that all, when they do something different, then that is a similar idea. The computer as a whole is better than a switch. Before you scowl at me, humans do the same thing. I take a team of soldiers who have worked together, and over here, I have a team of randomly chosen, highly skilled civilians who are thrown together for the first time. The team of soldiers, even if their skills are individually worse, are gonna beat the random band. Okay? A school of fish, a flock of birds, a swarm of bees, they all have emergent behavior where they seem to fly together, they turn at the same moment. They're not acting completely individually. So what I'm positing is a species which is so complex, has so many castes, has such a huge social order that it can become far more advanced even than we have on Earth. Now, obviously, I'd have to suggest that these creatures, if they can make spaceships, they got to have some kind of technical instinct. This isn't impossible. Ants have an instinct for building tunnels. There's lots of things that have instincts for building. Now, this has also been suggested by some science fiction authors. For example, Larry Niven wrote a book called The Mote in God's Eyes. And in this, he invents a species of the Motes that have such a technical instinct for knowing how machines work. Now, of course, the main Mote species in the book are intelligent, but he also describes sub-intelligent ones like monkeys who become deadly pests when they get aboard a human spaceship. In the excellent science fiction movie Gamera versus the Legion, the filmmakers invent a species of spacefaring, non-intelligent beings. These creatures are silicon-based, they communicate by radio waves, they actually mistake human cities, which emit radio waves, as enemy attacks, so they go in there. These also have castes, but not as many as I'm imagining for my own race. And they travel through space by making the giant plant-like things that fire. Anyway, Gamera vs. Legion is a pretty great science fiction movie, even if it has giant monsters. So let's imagine for us, for our spacefarers, a species of highly advanced insectoid beings, multiple castes, a technical instinct. Because this is a super race capable of interstellar travel, it may have hundreds or thousands of castes. A starship might hold dozens of castes, from fighter pilots to engineers to medical creatures, all non-sentient, all working by instinct. So here's a warrior, the species I invented, which I named the Mendiku. Now, when I'm saying they're non-sentient, I don't mean they're as stupid as like an ant. These are bigger, they might be as smart as a dog or a chimp, or more, The point is that individually, they are no match for a human in intelligence. They might be ferocious in battle or dedicated in work effort, but they're fundamentally not going to be able to play a game of chess with you. Now, we can modify the castes. For example, the Mendiku warrior I show here has guns built into it. Now, social insects engage in this kind of modification. Queens pull off their own wings when they're no longer needed of ants. Worker bees select which offspring become new queens and create them as queens instead of workers. Now, how would a species like this actually achieve spaceflight? Well, it would have to be rare and rely on luck. In the film Gamera vs. Legion, the creatures grow huge plants which fire off seeds into space to colonize other worlds. Now, in the panspermia hypothesis, all life on Earth came from spores from space. If enough such spores survived, these entities could begin traveling between, communicating between worlds, even if they're non-sentient. And even ants are able to understand the concept of trade and storage. I kid you not. The universe is huge. Being fully sentient is rare. I'm not sure the individualistic, personally intelligent things would even be the majority. There may be multiple of these empires out there. If we met one, you couldn't communicate with them. You couldn't speak with them. They are robot-like almost in how they expand and do things. They'd be a very interesting encounter. And that is my theory for today. Thanks for listening.